These are the two most recent winners of the Booker Prize, but at the time they were longlisted, no one had ever heard of them. So it's very possible that the next winner is going to be a book that no one's predicted and no one's talking about. Today I want to show you 8 books that I've tracked down that could be contenders for those surprise winners. Hi, I'm Ben, welcome back to my channel. It's Booker season and so the predictions are coming in thick and fast. Because most of us just haven't got the foggiest what the judges are actually thinking, we all seem to be turning to our own different methods this year. I went for spreadsheets because that's just who I am. Jess at Stalking Kafka has gone for her intuition and Charlotte Malloy has turned to her tarot cards. But something that stuck with me is what Andy at Rora Read said. He was explaining that he thinks the judges are likely to pick a bunch of books that are just completely wild, ones that we haven't heard of. And so guessing at random has just as good a shot of being right as any other method. What he decided to do was take the big eligible books list from Goodreads and spin the wheel just to pick 13 of them randomly. His video is really good, by the way. It is lots of fun, and if the Booker predicting doesn't work out for him, he's got a fabulous career as a bingo caller ahead of him. Anyway, if you're not familiar, the Goodreads list I'm talking about is this community created list of eligible books that could potentially be nominated. If you're a Goodreads member, you can vote on the books in the list and you end up with a sort of ranked order, essentially suggesting which books people on Goodreads think will end up on the long list. It is a big list and it currently has 169 books on it. There are a few that sneak in there that aren't actually eligible, and sadly Andy's Wheel of Fortune fell victim to a few of those, but by and large it is a list of possibles. It's a useful list, but one that is actually incomplete and kind of leads us all towards a bit of groupthink when we're making predictions. And I kind of want to take Andy's point a little bit further, because although this seems like an enormous list of contenders, there are plenty of books out there that, even if you've combed through the list in fine detail, could still completely surprise you on the 30th of July. In the course of my research for my actual predictions, which I will link in the description, I came across a number of books which sounded super interesting to me and which at the time of filming this video are not on that Goodreads list. Some of these are admittedly from very tiny little publishers, so it's no wonder we haven't heard of them, but some aren't. Some are from really big publishers and imprints that might be biding their time with their marketing because they're confident that the book could get a long listing. So today I've got 8 books I want to share with you that I think could make an appearance on the Booker long list, but which you've probably never heard of. First up is The Bay by Julia Rampin. This is from indie publisher Saraband, who had nominated the year before last for Case Study by Graham McRae Burnett. So they've got form in the prize. This novel is based on the true story from 2004 of the Morecambe Bay cockling disaster, where more than 20 undocumented Chinese immigrants drowned when they were undertaking some really dangerous and illegal work. It's about the friendship between a Morecambe man and a Chinese woman, and it's supposed to be really warm-hearted and generous. I think this one sounds great, and I do wonder if it will be a chance for the judges to help us see a bit of empathy at a time when there's a lot of heat in politics and there's a lot of tension around the small boats crossings that are happening from France to the UK, and sometimes the best way to build empathy is to read stories. Next, I want to tell you about Albert Arica's 2 Hours. This is from a small press that I've actually never heard of before called Eris, and what caught my eye just in a bookshop by chance was the kind of strange form factor. It's quite a long book, which might suggest that it's going to be a bit kooky inside, but it's actually quite conventionally structured. This is about a young woman who moves from New York to Paris with her family when she's just a teenager, and she has a bit of a missed connection experience as she's leaving, and she kind of reflects on that throughout her whole life and thinks about what might have been different. I think it's got a bit of an auto-fictional vibe to it. It's quite Cuskian sounding, and it's actually blurbed by Rachel Cusk, who says that her first novel was a small masterpiece and that with this one she's making something of a similar stature. So that's pretty high praise indeed, and kind of why I picked it up. Then we have a book called Bird Eye by Judith Hennigan, and this is a novel from another small publisher that has some experience with a Booker. It's from Salt Publishing, who were nominated, I think, in 2016 for a book called The Many, but I can't remember the author's name right now. If you know it, please do let me know. But anyway, this one is about a commune based up in the Catskill Mountains in upstate New York, where a young man, a stranger to the commune, turns up and asks to stay. And I think it's about the sort of friendship between that young man and an older woman who is the founder of the commune. The description says it's about tolerance and the choices we make in good faith and sometimes the consequences that come of those. And it is blurbed by Claire Fuller, who I think just has really excellent taste based on what I see her recommending. And if not the Booker, this does sound a bit like Women's Prize catnip. Then I've got a book that is not out yet, but it is from a pretty big press, and I had not heard of it at all until I stumbled across it on their website. This is In Universes by Emmett North, and it's published by Hutchinson Heinemann, and they have, by my reckoning, 2 spots for submissions this year. I think one of those is going to be The Unsettled by Ayanna Mathis, but then I'm not really sure what the other one could be, and this could well fill that spot. This one is sort of sci-fi, speculative, and I wouldn't normally expect to see that sort of novel on the Booker longlist, but we had In Ascension last year, and I think you'll notice that both in terms of the title and the cover, it really is trying to evoke the same things as In Ascension. And I'm actually not sure how I feel about that, because I think it looks nice, but I also like a bit of originality, but it is pretty. I don't know. Anyway, this is a queer multiverse story about a person who experiences their kind of sliding doors moment, and then that's like a jumping off point for them to experience lots of different what could have been lives. And it's blurbed by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah, who is another person whose taste I would just trust. It's giving me Everything Everywhere All at Once vibes, and I'm kind of digging it. Okay, the next book is one called The Mayor by Angarad Hampshire. This is from a very small press that I had not heard of before called Northodox Press, and I have a copy of this one because the author actually reached out to me and asked if I was interested. And I don't usually go for unsolicited requests, to be honest, but this one caught my eye because she mentioned that the book was very much inspired by a quote from a famous sociologist called Zygmunt Bauman, who I read at university, and his book Modernity and the Holocaust is one of the few texts that has just really, really stuck with me ever since. If you are interested in that history and how those horrors came to be, I'd really recommend reading it. It's very readable and just a really brilliant piece of sociology. Anyway, this book is about a real-life figure called Ermine Braunsteiner, who was one of the few women to work at a concentration camp, and she earned herself the nickname the Mayor for the horrible reason that she was known to kick people to death. Very dark. After the war, she fled to Austria and managed to live a pretty normal suburban life. She got married and she was a housewife, and her husband had no idea about this. That is, until a New York Times journalist turns up and blows their life up. And so this is a story about her and her husband and how they grapple with the revelations of her past. I think it sounds really interesting. Okay, the next one sounds like a pretty fun, wild one, and it's The Dimensions of a Cave by Greg Jackson. This one's got a weird cover, at least in the UK. It's got this inside out thing going on where the front cover looks like the inside flap from the back, and then if you open it, and I've thumbed through it in bookshops, the inside flaps look like half the actual normal cover. I don't know, it's a good idea in theory, but I don't think it looks very nice on the book. This one's about a reporter who is investigating some shadowy military programs, and it's about power and corruption, and he ends up more and more closely trapped in the net of these seedy schemes. It's apparently a modern retelling of Heart of Darkness. You know, retellings, they're pretty fetch right now. It is published by Granta, though, who have, according to the spreadsheet, 2 slots for submission. And I think those are probably going to be taken by Blackouts and Julia, and they've got quite a few others that could make it in. So I don't think this will have been submitted, but it could make it in as a call-in. Then I have another book that's not quite out yet in the UK. It comes out in August, and that is The Rich People Have Gone Away by Regina Porter. This one is about a family who go to upstate New York in 2020 to wait out the COVID lockdown. Lucky for them. And to be honest, I'm not sure why there's so much upstate New York in this list, but oh well. Anyway, what happens while they're there is that the husband and wife have an argument about the husband's ancestry, which I think is probably going to be related to slavery, because I think this book addresses race. And after that argument, the wife goes missing, and the husband finds himself prime suspect in this missing persons case. It does sound a bit thrillery, I will grant you that. I wouldn't normally think of a book with that description as being a contender for the Booker, but it is blurbed by Paul Harding, and if you've got the name Paul somewhere on the outside of your book, I think that probably triples your chances of being longlisted. You know what happened last year. This one's from Jonathan Cape, and they've actually got a pretty stacked list of books that they could submit, and I think they've only got 2 spots, so I would be surprised if this one was submitted. I think it's more likely to be Orbital and Wild Houses, but another one that could be called in. Finally then is a book called Pariah Genius by Ian Sinclair, and this one is from Cheerio Publishing, and it's got a plot that specifically mentions Francis Bacon, and I was like, what is going on here? Because I've read one book from Cheerio Publishing before, which was Tade Thompson's Jackdaw, and that had a lot of Francis Bacon in as well, and I was like, do these people just publish books about Francis Bacon? And the answer is yes, pretty much, because the publisher is run by the estate of Francis Bacon and they commission authors to write novels. So that was something I learned recently. Anyway, this book kind of features Francis Bacon because it's about the life of the photographer John Deakin and his experience in Soho, hanging around with Francis Bacon and lots of other artsy-fartsy people who were cool and hip at the time, whichever decade that was in, which I can't remember. And it seems to be an interesting mixture of novel and biography, which might be formally interesting to the judges, I don't know. So those are my 8 rando picks that I'm saying you won't have heard of, but I'm sure some of you will have heard of some of these books, and if you have read them, I would love to hear from you down in the comments what you thought. As I say, at the time I'm recording this video, none of these books are on the Goodreads list, but I'm sure someone will add them soon. I would also love to hear your under the radar picks. Which book is nobody talking about that has the potential to be our next Booker Prize winner? Please do let me know, because I love the inside track. I'm going to wrap it up there, so if you enjoyed this video, please do hit like, and if you'd like to see more from me, hit subscribe, and you'll get a new video from me about once a week. But until next time, toodles.